The Vashtar Dominion had conquered 11,000 worlds. Not a single one had ever repelled them. So when Fleet Admiral Toran Ashek received the automated warning buoy, drifting at the edge of Sol's Oort cloud, he laughed. The message was old, centuries old by the buoy's decay signature, but the words hadn't dulled with time. This region is under quarantine. Do not approach. You have been warned by those who came before you. Turn back. No signature. No threat display. No fleet numbers. No weapon specifications. No boastful declaration of power. Just a plain, almost bureaucratic notice, like a sign nailed to a fence around condemned property. Toran found that more insulting than any threat could have been. They didn't even bother to sound dangerous, he said to his first officer, Selvorik, as the bridge crew of the Ashima studied the star charts. A dying species scrawled graffiti on a rock and called it a warning. Command wants a full report before we commit the invasion fleet, Vorik said. Command wants results. Send a scout wing. Quietly. We'll see what's worth warning us about. 300 million miles away, on a ranch outside a town called Haswell, Colorado, population 2,000 and shrinking, a woman named Ellen Barrow was checking fence lines when the sky did something it hadn't done in 400 years. It didn't explode. It didn't flash. It just rippled, like heat off summer asphalt. And for 11 seconds, every electronic device within 600 miles simply forgot it existed. Ellen didn't know any of that. She just knew her truck stalled, her phone died, and her old ranch dog, Duke, started howling at absolutely nothing in the northern sky. She'd find out later that the 11 seconds had a name. The Colorado Historical Society kept a sealed archive on it. Most Americans had never heard of the Ward Protocol because most Americans had never needed to. Ellen's great-grandmother had. The Scout Wing, 6 sleek Vashtar cruisers, invisible to anything short of a dedicated deep space array, dropped out of transit 2 light hours from Earth. Standard procedure. Assess. Record. Withdraw. They never got the chance to withdraw. 11 seconds after arrival, every reactor aboard every ship in the wing fluctuated in perfect, impossible synchronization. Not a malfunction. Not sabotage in any form the Vashtar had cataloged in 11,000 conquests. The ships simply paused. Every system, every drive core, every weapon platform, humming along one moment and frozen mid-cycle the next, like a film reel snagging on a single frame. 11 seconds later, they resumed. Nothing damaged. Nothing stolen. No trace of an attacker. Just a single burst transmission, broadcast in perfect, flawless Vashtar standard, arriving from a source that pinged as originating inside their own hulls. You were warned. The Scout Wing commander, a decorated officer named Priest Kell, did the sensible thing. He turned his ships around and ran. He made it 4 light minutes before his engines pulsed dark a second time. This time they didn't come back for 6 hours. When they did, half his crew had aged what their medical scanners insisted was 11 years and 6 hours, and refused, every one of them, to speak about what they'd seen in the dark. Kell filed his report personally. Command called it fleet hysteria and had him relieved of duty. Admiral Toran Ashek called it an opportunity. A wounded, mysterious enemy was still an enemy worth conquering, and worth being remembered for conquering. He committed the invasion fleet. 400 warships. 80 million souls. What Toran did not know, what no record in the Dominion's 11,000 world archive contained, was that humanity had not spent the 4 centuries since the Ward Protocol's origin sitting quietly. They had spent it building. Not ships you could see. Not weapons you could point a sensor at. Humanity had learned, the hard way, in the ashes of a war fought against something even older and colder than the Vashtar, that the universe did not reward the loud. It rewarded the patient. Beneath Cheyenne Mountain, long decommissioned to the public eye, quietly humming beneath the earth to everyone who mattered, an array older than most nations still listened to the sky. It had been listening for 400 years. It had heard the Vashtar Scout Wing arrive before their engines finished cooling from transit. It had heard Admiral Toran's fleet begin its approach 3 full days before a single Vashtar sensor caught so much as a photon out of place. A woman named Deputy Director Rosalind Okafor, 61 years old, 3rd generation to hold the post, the kind of quiet steel that didn't announce itself in rooms, but was always the reason the room ran smoothly. Read the report at 4:12 in the morning, Mountain Time, in a windowless office that smelled like old coffee and older concrete. She didn't call the president first. She called her counterpart in Colorado, a rancher's granddaughter turned engineer named Louise Marsh, who ran the array's technical floor with the same unbothered competence her family had run cattle with for 6 generations. "They're coming in force this time," Rosalind said. "How many?" 400 hulls." Louise was quiet for a moment. Then, in the flat, unhurried drawl of someone who'd grown up watching storms rolling off the plains and knew exactly how much time you had before you needed to move the cattle, she said, "Well, guess we'd better wake the neighbors up properly this time." The Vashtar invasion fleet dropped into Sol's system in perfect formation, 400 warships arranged in a pattern that had broken the will of 11,000 civilizations before they'd fired a single shot. Earth did not answer with a fleet. It answered with silence. For 6 hours, nothing happened. Toran, standing on the Ashenma's bridge, began to allow himself something like satisfaction. Perhaps the warning had truly been an old, empty threat. Perhaps this dying species had spent its warning centuries ago and had nothing left. Then his sensor officer's console went dark. Then the officer beside her. Then, in a wave that moved through the fleet not ship by ship, but system by system, every screen on every vessel showed the same simple image. A photograph, degraded by time but unmistakable, of a mushroom cloud rising over a desert. Not the weapon itself, but a memory of what humanity had once decided never to become, and what they had built for centuries of quiet, patient defense to make sure they never had to become again. Beneath the image, 3 words, translated flawlessly into Vashtar Standard. "We remember. Do you?" Then the 11 seconds came. Except this time, they didn't end. Every reactor in the 400-ship fleet spun down in perfect unison, not with violence, not with fire, but with the terrible gentleness of a door being quietly, permanently closed. No explosions, no wreckage, no glory for either side to claim. The ships simply stopped, adrift, systems intact but utterly, irreversibly inert, drifting on the solar wind like leaves on a pond, forever out of reach of the worlds that had sent them. 80 million souls, preserved and powerless, a monument to a warning ignored. Admiral Toran Ashek's final log entry, recovered decades later by a human salvage team that boarded the derelict Ashenma in respectful silence, read simply, "They never fired a shot. They didn't need to. We came to conquer a graveyard and found, instead, its groundskeepers. God help whoever comes next." Back in Haswell, Colorado, Ellen Barrow never learned any of it. She fixed her fence, fed Duke, and watched the sky return to its ordinary, star-scattered self. Some nights, though, she'd sit on her porch with a cup of coffee going cold in her hands and swear the stars looked back a little differently than they used to, steadier somehow, like something out there was standing watch. She didn't know its name. She didn't need to. 90 million light-years of empire had learned, in 11 quiet seconds, what every American schoolchild is taught without ever quite understanding why. Some fences aren't there to keep you in. They're there because somebody, a long time ago, decided that this was worth protecting and made absolutely sure nobody would ever be foolish enough to test that decision twice.